Prescott Valley. This is the regular meeting of our Parks and Recreation for the month of February, and we'll start off with a roll call vote, please.
Chairperson Gummer?
Yes.
Vice Chair Polican?
Here.
Commissioner Brinkman?
Here.
Commissioner Fallman?
Here.
Commissioner Byram?
Present.
Commissioner Gorman?
Here.
Commissioner Pierce?
Here.
Very good. Full team tonight. Moving on, let's go for the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. We'll go to the approval of the minutes for the January 14th regular meeting. Do I have a motion for the approval of those minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of January 14th, 2020, the regular minutes.
I have a motion, to have a second.
Second.
A motion, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Now we'll go to our master plan presentation with our ever-popular Mike Svets this evening with more stunning information for us all.
I appreciate the ever popular, but we'll find out. You all might hate me after tonight because I know last time I showed you a lot of numbers. Tonight's even more. So if you like math, great.
Love numbers.
If not, I have a little trick for you. If you start to feel like you're losing attention, rub your earlobes for about 30 seconds. It gives you 7 more minutes. Honest, it works. I actually have had to use it myself.
Because when
but
Mike
not while I'm
sees that,
speaking.
he comes up here and
So if I see you rubbing your earlobes, I will not take personal offense. I wanted to circle back with you all. This is what we're going to cover tonight, but I wanted to circle back with you all on the level of service methodology. And the reason being is we presented to you all, and then things kind of moved in I don't want to say a completely different direction, but over the conversations with other folks over the last next couple of days after we presented, we basically came to a refinement of the levels of service methodology. And so I wanted to make sure you understood what that is and kind of where we're going. But we'll also then, new information is really all number driven. Capital improvement plan, program maintenance assessment, which we said we were going to complete and we have, and then the program assessment, and then to just kind of give you an understanding of the next steps. So level of service, again, this isn't anything new. It just kind of understands that when we start talking about level of service, it's the quantity of assets that you need in your system to meet your community's desired needs. And we use all of these different variables. This is the same information that we shared last time with you. And again, all of this information will be posted to the project website. So if you want to dive further, great. And we wanted to also recognize the population, and again, recognizing that you're at about 50,000 folks and going to be somewhere close to 95,000 folks. The one thing that we cleared up since the last time we met is that you currently have about 100,000 or 100% of all of your growth is going to be in master plan communities going forward. And so I think that's an important distinction, and it sets up where we're going with this level of service. Again, last time we talked very quickly about what the makeup is of your current master plan communities. Basically, your master plan community population is about 40% of Prescott Valley's total population. So what does that mean? That means, in rough numbers, if your current population is 50,000 folks, you have about 20,000 of those folks that live in master plan communities. But if we fast forward 15 years from now and you hit your 95,000 people projection, that number is going to go from 19,000, 20,000 to 65,000. The core of the town that lives outside of master plan communities will be consistent, meaning you'll have about 30,000 folks that live outside of master plan communities. It's just that the percentage of makeup becomes a lot less as your population grows. So this is kind of some of that master plan community impact we shared last time. Basically, master plan communities do provide park and rec amenities to their residents. We have captured all of that inventory, and it will be shown here. But we also recognize that some of the park and recreation amenities in master plan communities are only available to residents. So basically, they're private. They fulfill a public need, but they're not accessible to the entire community. Some of those are like the residence clubs, swimming pools, tennis courts, pickleball courts. So here are the level of service assumptions. We assume that the population is going to increase about 46,000 in the next 15 years. We assume that all of the growth will occur in master plan communities. We continue to assume that the master plan communities will provide some park and recreation amenities to residents living within the master plan community. So what does this mean? And this is a little bit of a change from the last time. We're going to kind of take a three-pronged approach to level of service. What this means is we need to determine what level of service of park and recreation amenities that master plan communities should provide to their residents by 2034. Determine what level of service park and recreation amenities that the town needs to provide to the population of 30,000 that don't live within master plan communities. And then determine what level of service of park and recreation amenities that the town should provide to all of the town's projected population of 95,000. So to give you an example of that last one, we know that master plan communities are not going to build athletic fields. That is a type of amenity that the town will provide, but it will need to provide it at a level of service to meet the needs of all 95,000 people. When you back up and say, what will the town provide to just that core of 30,000 folks? That is the neighborhood park amenities, the tennis courts, maybe not the dog parks, but the basketball courts, the playgrounds, and so on and so forth. And so what you're going to see is these three kind of levels of service, this three-pronged approach in terms of what does this look like. So from a master plan community perspective, we are basically focused on the master plan communities developing just neighborhood parks. We are recommending a level of service that is consistent with the general plan of 3.4 acres per 1,000 people in neighborhood parks. This means that the master plan communities will provide 202 acres will be looking to provide 202 acres of neighborhood parks to master plan community residents, assuming the population reaches 95,000. If the population doesn't, that 202 is totally based on the population reaching 95,000. If it reaches 80,000, then the number of park acres will obviously be less than that. And then we've identified those elements within the park and recreation system that will be a part of those neighborhood parks. So they could be dog parks, outdoor basketball courts, indoor swimming pools, outdoor swimming pools, and so on and so forth. It gives you an understanding basically of what is the outdoor recreation amenities or indoor recreation amenities that are going to be a part of those neighborhood parks that master plan communities develop for their residents. Okay? So in essence, what we're saying is that the town is working hand in hand with master plan communities to provide this level of park and recreation amenities for their residents and their residents only. And what this does is it means that the town then does not have to provide that to this population. So the next prong is that town level of service. So what does the town need to provide for the population of 30,000 folks? again, we are focused on just neighborhood parks in this scenario. Reason that we don't feel like you need to add any community parks at this juncture for just the 30,000 folks is that your current level of service is 3.77 acres per thousand. The population is not going to change over the next 15 years, and the recommendation in the general plan to be consistent is 3.4 acres per thousand. So that means you don't need to add. But where you do need to add is adding neighborhood parks to the tune of 57 acres. And then again, we've identified the things that we should look to add as part of those neighborhood parks going forward. You see down below the indoor recreation center. Currently, you don't provide any square footage, and of course, this was a high need. We're recommending 60,000 square foot of recreation center indoor recreation center space. And as things move forward with the YMCA, it is expected that that facility will be around 60,000 square feet. So you will actually have that box checked within the next 24 to 36 months. So then we move to what does the town need to provide for the community as a whole? All 95,000 people by 2034. And this is where the focus is on community parks. And so we will look to add 212 acres of community parks to meet the needs of the 95,000 people that live here. Primarily, this is going to be around athletic fields, disc golf courses, skate parks, as well as other potential amenities. The best way to kind of look at this is Aquafria Park. That is where you have your greatest opportunity. It is likely that that park will be, that big, huge parcel of land will be broken up into multiple parks or multiple pods. The likelihood of being able to develop that in one big phase is probably not financially feasible to do so for a number of reasons, but it also gives you an opportunity to phase in the maintenance costs associated with it as well. So this is that three-pronged approach, and I want to stop and see if you have any questions about this before I move on. This is very unique. We utilize this methodology quite often, but your community is exceptionally unique in terms of how it's going to grow, its relationship with master plan communities, and we feel like we have this very much dialed into who is going to be the partners in the game to meet your community's overall recreation needs, master plan communities, development communities, as well as then the town as a whole, including the YMCA. Any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions?
A quick comment, Mike. I really like the three-prong approach. It really makes sense, and it addresses some of the issues that we're really looking at. One question I have is, you have 60,000 square feet for the indoor facility, which might coincide with a Y if that happened.
Correct.
Before we were a little higher at that number. If the Y didn't happen, would that number be a little higher?
I think that number would be higher if you did not have all of this square footage associated with your indoor recreation centers associated with master plan communities. Because right now they're providing almost 82,000 square feet, which is almost twice of what we would typically recommend for a community as a whole. So they're currently providing 4 square feet per person that live in master plan communities. Our go-to number that includes indoor aquatics is usually around 2 square feet per person, just simply because it's hard to do cost recovery with anything larger, and because the costs of those kind of facilities become extravagant if you start getting outside of 2 square feet per person. So that is why we're kind of dialed into, if the YMCA does come in And you're really talking about providing that amenity, that indoor recreation center, which is really high on your priority list for your community. That 2 square foot per person will meet the needs of the 30,000 folks that don't live in the master plan communities. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
I have a question about the Aquafria Park. Where's the general location of that?
It's just out here, correct, Brian? Just out this way?
Glassford Hill, Santa Fe.
I'm sorry?
Glassford Hill and Santa Fe.
Glassford Hill and Santa Fe Loop.
Where the apartments are, you see that open area going out towards the east? That whole area all the way over is, how many acres, Brian?
Pretty close.
It's about 300.
I have a
And
question.
the likelihood of actually being able to develop all 300 is probably difficult, but again, that's why you do site-specific master plans for that, once you're able to.
In regard to this big parcel of land, there's going to be a road going through that to connect Viewpoint South to Viewpoint North. Manly, Viewpoint up to Roundup, Viewpoint. Now, that's going to use up a lot of the acreage. Do we have any idea how much will be used?
Yes, what that entire open space that Commissioner Brinkman was indicating, that's a full section of land. So in totality, that's 640 acres right there. It would be that northerly half if you cut that on a diagonal, which was the route that the road extension would follow.
Okay.
That would be how we'd cross that section right there. So if you can imagine looking at it from a square's perspective, we would be cross-sectioning it with a roadway, with the northern half of that property being on a park development, with the other in regards to housing and a multitude of other opportunities that would exist there. Currently, it resides within state lands, and until it's purchased for commercial or housing development, those types of things, that's when this would transpire. This plan for this park and its development has been part of the town's general plan since the early 80s.
Yeah.
So this is a long-term vision and process of development for our community. So that it has been a very substantial component of the town's plans for a number of different years, and serving in this general capacity. It's had a variety of different development concepts out there. It'll transition through another one as time ebb and flows with all trends and activities and things of that nature. And much like what Mike was indicating, it will be developed in smaller parcels as we go through, because it's more economically feasible to create that infrastructure over a course of time. So that's really what we're looking at here for this property. But its location is roughly off of that Santa Fe Loop intersection with Glassford Hill. And so when you look to the northeast, it's that full section of property that's the future location for this park development. Okay, does that help? Alrighty.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Okay, so moving on, let's talk capital improvement plan. So one of the things that we had talked about very early on in the process was understanding that we were going to take your capital improvement plan and break it up into what we'll call 3 buckets. That first bucket is really just about your existing park system and the life cycle replacement of such things as restroom buildings, playgrounds, furniture, fixtures, equipment. Basically, it's things that you know that you're going to have to replace to maintain a high-quality park system going forward. It's not expected to do anything other than replace the amenities that are there today. So a restroom building for a restroom building. Yes, of course, it'll be nicer, it'll be better designed, it'll be new, it'll be functional, but it's not expected to be anything other than that. Bucket 2 is where we start talking about how can we use your existing park system to expand services, and our focus, and you'll see this in a second, is really about splash pads. Where can we add splash pads to existing parks to help meet that need? And then that third bucket is very visionary. And so this is the Aquafria Parks. It's the development of 57 acres. It's the Barlow Masick property in Fane Park. And so we've taken your CIP and broken it up into these three buckets with the understanding that you probably have like 4 primary funding sources to do all of this. One is just general fund dollars. Another would be to do a bond. A third is park impact fees, whether that be neighborhood park or community park, and the fourth being grants. And so we can't apply all of those funding sources. For example, impact fees can really only apply to bucket number 3. You can't apply that to life cycle replacement. So it's the other reason why we like to do this is to make sure that everybody gets the fact that I have said this time and time again, that life cycle replacement never stops. You can do your projects within 10 years, but you know what? Come that 11th year, you're going to have a new set of life cycle replacement that's going to occur. So the CIP development, obviously, it must be financially viable. Otherwise, why are you going to do it? It includes projects that are likely to be implemented within the next 10 years. It's responsive to data collected and feedback. So whether it's community priorities, whether it's the level of service, the park and facility assessments, the park-by-park workshop that we conducted with staff, all of that information kind of works its way into this. Obviously, it has to be consistent with other planning efforts, such as the general plan and the stated acreage there for community parks and neighborhood parks for every 1,000 folks. And then, of course, we did build a 5% escalator into this, knowing that you can't implement everything next year. So, and costs go up. So this is a summary of the sustainable projects. It is looking somewhere around 9.7, 9.8 million. And instead of trying to put together a huge laundry list of all of the projects and all of the parks, I've just tried to summarize it for you. So almost 40%, almost 4 million of that is just restroom building replacement. Over the next 10 years. The playground replacement makes up another 1.6 or 16%. Then you have lake pond restoration at Fane and Urban Lakes. You've got athletic field lighting replacement at Mountain Valley. You've got system-wide irrigation replacements. And then you do have some administrative things. Plan for your next parks master plan in 10 years and update your urban forest management plan. All of this makes up in the neighborhood of approximately 80% of that total $9.7 million figure. The rest of it is really things like just general FF&E, furniture, fixtures, equipment, benches, trash cans, could be such things as some picnic shelters replacement, even signage at some of your parks. Okay? So the expanded services is where we talk about how do we add experiences to your existing park system without building new. And as I mentioned at the intro, most of this money is geared towards splash pads. And we identified 3 locations, Antelope, Bob Edwards, and the Civic Center. These would be likely very different types of splash pads. Kind of like how you can have very different types of playgrounds, I think you would have very different types of splash pads. I would imagine something at Civic Center that would be probably more playful fountains. If anybody's ever been to Glendale and been to Westgate and you kind of see what that fountain looks like, that would be something I would imagine that would be more suitable for that location versus something that's really colorful and has shower heads and spraying features and so on and so forth that looks kind of like a playground. Those might fit better at Antelope and Bob Edwards.
Mike,
and then,
why did you choose these 3 parks?
Yes.
What was your basis for choosing those 3 parks for the splash pads?
I think they have, they will, a couple of things. I think it creates a little bit of geographical equity in your system, but also I think that they are the parks that you probably have the most land available to you to be able to add something like that, as well as the support amenities.
Well, I was wondering if you took in the population of youngsters that would use those pads.
Right. Yep. So that's part of it as well. Exactly. That speaks to that geographical equity and locating them in areas that are going to primarily serve the 30,000 folks that we're talking about.
To the circles.
Exactly. Perfect. And then the visionary is basically 3 buckets. We've talked about that 210 acres at Aquafria that would meet your level of service, 57 acres of neighborhood parks. That makes up almost 90% of that figure. We're also talking about complete park redevelopment at Sunflower, Tonto North, and Tonto South. They're tired, they're old, they're unproductive, and you can utilize those spaces in a much better way than they're currently being utilized. That would entail a site-specific master plan process for each of them, and then a corresponding capital construction cost associated with that. So those 2 chunks, soft costs, hard costs, are included in that $3.4 million. And then we're talking about the Barlow Mastick's house and that entire land out there as part of a project. It would require assessments, it would require site-specific master plans, and it would certainly lean towards that art, culture, historical preservation, tourism component that I think has long been envisioned for Fane and that particular property. Okay, so that's really those three summaries. So what does it look like in total? $122.7 million. Fully recognize that most of that is in the visionary project bucket. Okay, if we look at it through the lens of project type, $22 million worth of improvements to your existing parks, about 68, maybe 75,000 to just existing trails, and this is a little bit higher level of maintenance, and so it could just be some resurfacing. We recognize that most of the development community will be responsible for connecting their communities with others, so we're not necessarily proposing any new trails as part of this, recognizing that will be handled by the development community. New park development in the neighborhood of $100 million, and then the 2 administrative projects that I mentioned within the next 5 to 10 years. So in terms of timeline, we're very backloaded. So the focus is primarily the next 5 years is really about championing life cycle replacement. And I think that the town has done a good job of this already, but I think it's as your park system ages, it's really good to get out in front and hold yourself to a life cycle replacement plan, because once you start it, people get used to it, and they get used to funding it, and they get used to expecting it, so that you're not waiting for folks to come knock down your door and say, those restroom buildings are terrible, you need to replace them. That's kind of where you're at right now with some of your amenities. And again, most of the longer term projects are in that visionary bucket. Okay? So that is the capital improvement summary. Any questions on that?
I had a question about surplus. So what if you come under budget in some projects? Will that get funneled over to
I would love to say that would happen.
I'd be optimistic.
But it's probably not. It's why we kind of built the 5% escalator in there to account for construction cost increases over time. But Most of the time, projects you end up value engineering things out. If you do end up with a surplus, I think it's a matter of just making sure that you put the highest quality amenities in there. And usually when you get into construction projects, if you feel like you're dialed in and you have a little bit more, then you start adding options to that to see what those costs would be to add that.
So you're telling me the bathroom's going to have granite countertops?
Oh, heck no. No. But I think, you're probably looking at restroom buildings being somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 each. I mean, they're not cheap. Yeah, they are expensive. Okay. All right, so park maintenance. So last time, or way back when, we talked about total cost of ownership. And we talked about the fact that you can have capital investment, and we have to talk about the fact that we have life cycle replacement. So we just kind of did that with those two. So this next step is to recognize that middle, all-important circle, which is making sure that you have the resources necessary to manage and maintain whatever it is that you build. Okay, so we have worked on this quite extensively over the last 6 months, and have staff has been wonderful in terms of slicing and dicing data and putting up with my additional requests to refine data. But what we have really tried to do with this is give you an understanding of how much money you're spending on a cost per acre basis for each of your parks, also based on the classification of those parks. So you have some parks that are community park, you have some parks that are mini, some parks that are neighborhood. And so what I wanted to run through with you is the result of that analysis so you get an understanding, and then I'll explain kind of the takeaways. So when we look at community parks, you have 5 of them. A couple of things to reference. So you have the classification column, and then you have the acreage for each one of these parks. Then you have the park name. The 3 columns to the right give you an understanding of how much the town is spending to maintain that park acreage on a per acre basis. If you have any third-party landscape service contracts that are managing and maintaining any of those parks, and then what you have is a total cost per acre. So in your community parks, they are all managed and maintained by your town parks division. There are no third-party contracts that come in to do regular routine maintenance. Doesn't mean that you don't have somebody that comes in and fixes something that they're, a skilled laborer to do. But it's the routine landscape services where you have some costs. So when you look at this, the big takeaway is that the larger the park, the lower the cost. It actually becomes far more efficient to manage bigger spaces than it is to manage smaller spaces. I know that seems like an oxymoron, but it has been tried and true regarding park maintenance time and time again. And you'll see that as we go through this. Neighborhood parks. So you have 8 of them. And again, same kind of analysis that says, here's what the town is spending on a per acre basis for each one of these parks. Where you have cost per acre landscape services, which is primarily just Pronghorn, Quailwood, and Santa Fe Station, and then what your total cost per acre is when you combine whether it's just staff doing it themselves or whether it's staff plus a landscape contractor. Again, I know this is totally out of context, but I just wanted to kind of frame these for you so that when we start talking about what does this all mean. Mini parks. So the big takeaway here is that mini parks range in acreage from 0.1 to 2.2 acres. And you have per acre costs ranging from $14,000, almost $15,000 per acre, up to almost $60,000 per acre for Lions. So as I said before, it's really important to recognize that the larger the park, the more efficient the maintenance is. The big takeaway tie back to all of this is, if you remember, we are not recommending any additional mini parks going forward. And the general plan does not recommend any mini parks going forward. They have very limited recreational value, and they cost a ton of money on a per acre basis to manage and maintain. Now, your mini parks are being maintained at a really, really, really high level, and they're consistent with how you're managing and maintaining neighborhood and community parks, which is part of why the costs are so high. But you have to, because they're so small that anything not maintained in any of those parks is going to look like the entire park is neglected. So it has a very high level of maintenance for the acreage, but it kind of gives you an understanding of what that looks like. And then we did a summary regarding your open space and special use parks, which is really the open spaces are Fane, Overlook, and Trailhead. Fane is really just a really large open natural acreage space, and you're just at about $600 to $700 per acre. That's pretty typical for that type of space. Special use that we have at the end at Civic Center, it's kind of hard to give you a benchmark, but for that space, that is pretty much dialed in as well. So again, this is to kind of give you a snapshot of, we've done a lot of work to identify on a very cost per acre basis what it's costing you to manage and maintain each one of your parks within the classifications. So what does it look like? In summary, so your mini parks are costing you $33,000 per acre. But for the level of service that you're managing and maintaining those at, a $30,000 cost per acre is not out of the question. If you were to cut back on that maintenance, sure, you could reduce that cost per acre. But based on the standards around which you're managing and maintaining it, you're not that far off. And again, when you start to, go down the list of what you look at for neighborhood parks, community parks, special use parks, open space, you're very much dialed in. I think the big takeaway, as I said before, your mini parks are your smallest, and they're your most costly. Your neighborhood parks are your second smallest, and they're your second most costly. Your community parks are usually the larger parks, and those are the ones that cost you the least per acre. So I was pleasantly surprised, because we just got a bunch of data, and we had to turn around and analyze it, and I was actually very happy with this because of how close you were. I know that the mini park is certainly an eye-opener, and it's certainly something for us to keep an eye on, but I think the big takeaway is that we're not looking to build any of these in the future. You're not going to use taxpayer dollars inefficiently. We also wanted to take a look at, are you getting the bang for your buck out of your contractor? So you have third-party contracts in some of doing landscape services, primarily landscape, so maintenance, some fertilizing or mowing, and so on and so forth. And so what we wanted to do is take a look at it and say, are you getting the bang for your buck out of that? So the first two is looking at neighborhood parks. The cost per acre for staff only to maintain the neighborhood parks that you're maintaining just by yourselves is just at about $11,400 per acre. When you combine staff and a third-party contractor, it just jumps up an additional $600 per acre. So there's not a huge difference. From a mini park perspective, again, same type of equation. You're very close to the cost per acre doing it just by staff or doing it with staff and a third-party contractor. So the takeaway for this is to recognize, you know what, you have a good mix right now. There's always challenges with third-party contractors. There's always challenges with quality. There's always challenges with contract administration. But if you put the right scope out there and what you ask them to do, and they give you a fair price and you administer that contract, then you get these kind of results. The big takeaway tie-back is when we presented the information related to people's condition rating of your park system, it was very high. And so you're using your park resources effectively and efficiently, managing them to a high standard regardless of whether it's staff or whether it's third-party contractor. The other thing that I think is important regarding this slide and this level of analysis is this gives you a starting point that says if we add 10 acres of neighborhood parks, we are going to need an additional $125,000 in operating costs to manage and maintain them. That's the best part of all of this. It not only affirms that your park maintenance is doing a great job, but it also gives you a guideline for what you need to add to your operating budget to manage a new park at the level that you're managing your existing parks. These numbers are based on 2020 dollars or this budget year. So of course there will need to be some adjustments or escalation to them just simply based on inflation and cost of living increases. Okay? So great job on park maintenance. Any questions on that?
Well, the mini parks could lend themselves towards an adopt-a-park with a little bit of work. You may be able to find people that would do that.
Yeah, I think you probably could offset some of those costs. But just like you're managing a third-party contractor, you have costs associated with managing volunteers as well. And I think it certainly would help to defray some of those costs. But some of the things that you're doing at those small acres, at some point, I think if you ever ran into budget crunches, that would be the place to look to reduce your level of maintenance, just simply because the recreational value that they add to your system is minuscule compared to what's happening at your neighborhood and community parks. So it gives you a roadmap for, gosh, you know what, if we have to cut our budget, what are we going to reduce? That's a good starting point right there.
What's the usage for your mini parks versus your neighborhood versus your community?
They're much smaller. I mean, because...
Well, I know, but how the usage...
Oh, yeah.
Are they... What's used more? So what's more valid?
More valid is community parks. Because they appeal to the entire community as a whole, and you typically have elements in them that are appeal to the community as a whole. Neighborhood parks are second, and mini parks or pocket parks have very, very small value. At most, they typically have is a playground or a shelter or a gazebo, maybe some open space or walking trail. But when you think about Lions Park, it's 0.1 acres.
There's nothing.
I mean, most people's lots, their housing lots, are larger than that in Prescott Valley.
That's the park on Robert Road, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I was just locating
That's
it.
the park on Robert Road, what has a bench on it, and is about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just curious, I don't know if this even comes up in the data, but what's the general consensus for the mini park maintenance? Is it just overall upkeep? Is it just revamping? I don't know the overall cost. Does that kind of make a sense? What are they actually doing to maintain those mini parks that would cost that amount?
We're working to maintain that same level of standard care that we do throughout our entirety park system. Therefore, much like what Mike alluded to, if we were to change that, it literally would come across as borderline abandonment.
Giving up on it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, not our goal. We don't want to be a source of blight by any means, but unfortunately that is the level at which it takes to do that, which again is reflective back in regards to previously in our general plan update. Part of this assessment as well is this would be a direction not to go from not only a cost feasibility aspect, but a utilization aspect of this as well too. Put the money in regards to where folks can use it and do those things. Some of these properties, Lions Park is a perfect example, happen to be a byproduct of a road realignment process. And so there's some of this transference, development, moving the agenda forward, if you will, that will be part of these discussion items. As Mike indicated, it could perhaps be a realignment of budget and how we want to work with these types of things. Do we want to transfer it into a different use function? if you will, so that it can minimize itself. So these are some of these growing pains and analysis that we're going to continue to be doing down the road. These are just some of those wonderful identifiers that we're having right now, so that we can begin making these plans over the course of the next 10 years in its development. So some of these things are possible. Some of these things, maybe this is just what we have. We're accepting and we're understanding it, managing it. We mentioned the possibility of adopting. We can lessen some of those direct impacts that we may not be able to avoid all of them, but just a variety of different strategies. But it is part of our inventory. So that's what we're working on.
I think Brian's point about if you reduce the level of maintenance at those, they potentially become used for other reasons. And I think people need to know that that's a park, and the only way that you can take that small type of acreage and manage it and maintain it so it's a park is to do it at pretty high quality. Because otherwise it becomes used, even if it's unused, it's better unused than it being used for the wrong reasons. Okay? So, all right, so program assessment, and then I promise I'll be done. So this also has been a good process with the Recreation Division staff, and I'm going to run through you a series of different types of analysis so that you understand how they're going to be managing their projects forward, okay? The best part about this entire assessment, as I just mentioned, is it's actually an evaluation tool that is sustainable from year to year, month to month, for the division. Some of which folks were already doing, some might be new ground. So there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve in terms of using this information. But one of the things we wanted to look at, so we've broken this information out primarily at first by recreation programs and then the art and culture programs. One of the things we wanted to get an understanding of was what ages are you serving? You have ages, all ages in your community. And I think it's important to recognize that the target is for each one of these different age segments that you have at least 2 programs honed in on serving these age segments as a primary program. So the things 2 to 3. So you see the 3 program areas that I think you have opportunities for growth. One is targeting preschool programs. The second is adults 35 to 54, and the third is active adults 55 to 64. This doesn't mean that you don't have an individual program, but what it does mean is that you have a core program area. So, for example, you have swim lessons and swim lessons alone that really target preschoolers. You do have other programs that target them as a secondary market, but not a primary market. So there are individual programs that fall underneath each one of these core program areas. The idea is to have 2 to 3 for each 2 to 3 core program areas that serve each of these age segments at a primary level. Okay? Art and culture is doing a much better job. They have at least 3 for the ages served, and that smallest group, of course, is the preschoolers. But you can see that they've got a number of primary target markets for these age segments for each one of their core programs. So that's one level of analysis. The idea is to recognize that you're in this business to serve everybody. It doesn't mean that you can be everything to everybody, but you want to have a good distribution of your resources given the balanced age segment that you have in your community. So, life cycle programs. Programs, just like assets, have life cycles to them. Being a recovering Parks and Recreation director, but also starting on the recreation side of the equation, it's always hard to let go of something that you started. You always want to give it first aid and CPR. And what we've identified is there is a best practice distribution. So if you can imagine a bell curve, so I'll draw it backwards for you, but the left side, is it the left? Yes, the left side is going up the mountain. Then you got the top of the mountain, and then you got the down slope. You want to have 50 to 60% of your programs on that right side of that bell curve. That means you're continually being creative and refreshing, but it also means that you're letting go of programs that are on that downslope. The top is that mature level. So we've done a great job of building this program up. We know exactly how many people are going to show up for these programs time after time, how much are going to register. You want about 40% of your programs up there. On the back end, that downslope, those are the programs that you need to understand, you need to let go of. There's no CPR involved, there's no first aid, because once you free those resources up from those programs that are on the saturation and decline stage, it gives you the resources to reinvest into new programs. And so this has been helpful to look at this through this lens and say, you know what, we have a little bit of work to do to let go of some of the things that are on the saturated decline stage so that you can reinvest them into the intro and takeoff and growth stage. Art and culture, actually doing a little bit better with some of this, but again, it's just a matter of understanding that programs have life cycles and we need to let go of them when we need to let go of them. So cost of service, this is where we're going to start getting into some really serious numbers. So what we wanted to do was understand how much taxpayer dollars are going into running every one of your programs versus how much of it is offset by expenditures. So we've started with what we'll call a classification of service methodology. And I want to take a little bit of time to explain this because it is the root of potentially having a change to your pricing policy going forward. So we classify services based on level of benefit provided to the community as a whole. So essential services are those in which the community benefits as a whole from you offering those programs. And those are the ones where you have more people typically involved and you end up spending taxpayer dollars because the community as a whole is benefiting from those. Important programs are where you have an individual who's benefiting from that, but also the community benefits as a whole. Many kid programs such as sports or learn to swim classes kind of fall into this category because there's an inherent nature that we want to keep kids busy and we want to give them things to recreate, but we don't want it to cost a fortune. So teaching kids to learn to swim, they get an individual benefit, but the community benefits as a whole because you have less life-saving incidents or potentially less drownings, and we know how that kind of trauma impacts a community. Individual or value-added services are where we have individual benefits. So typically fitness classes for the mainstream, piano lessons, ballet classes, those are the things that kind of fall into the only person that's benefiting by you running that program is the individual who's taking it. And so there's a correlation between level of benefit and the cost recovery associated with it. So the things that are essential services are those that have a low level of cost recovery, or at a minimum. In other words, we're not going at this to make money or recover costs. We're doing this to provide it as a service to the community. And then the further up the pyramid you go, you look to recover those costs at a higher level because the individual starts to benefit specifically from that, meaning less taxpayer dollars should go to support that. Everybody got that? Okay. So we ran park recreation through a series of data crunches with regards to this. And these are going to be very complicated spreadsheets, but I want to share them with you. So this is Aquatics. So in the far left column, you see the program. The column in the blue gives you an understanding of the number of participants that participated in those programs over the last 12 months. The columns that are in the orange, or maybe on your screen it looks a little reddish, are your costs. So it's your direct costs, which are typically instructors, supplies and materials for running that program. And then you have indirect costs, such as the hopes of the world that are overseeing those programs, and they have a percentage of their time that goes into running these programs. So that is your programs, your total number of participants, and your expenditures. Then we look at the revenues that were captured. These revenues are typically a combination of user fees, meaning I paid to take this class, or sponsorship dollars. So then we figure out what that delta is. Are you making money, or is it costing you money? And then we like to, the next column is the one that I'm a big fan of, is your total investment per participant. So in another way to say it is, how much money are you handing to somebody to take your program? How much money of taxpayer dollars, or what kind of discount are you giving them to take your program? The smaller the number, the better you're doing, just in terms of cost recovery and in terms of using taxpayer dollars efficiently. Then we then figure out what that total current cost recovery is. That takes care of everything that's happening today. Programs run, participants in the programs, what it costs to run those programs, the revenue generated, the overall revenue or expenditure loss, the amount of money that you're providing of taxpayer dollars to help support for people to take those programs, and what your current cost recovery is. Then the last four columns from level of benefit to the right give you an understanding of how we've classified each one of the programs, who's benefiting from them and the classification, and the minimum proposed cost recovery. Ultimately, we wanted to get an understanding of, do you have opportunities to generate a little bit more revenue or not based on the classification of services and all of the financial data that you're using to run your programs. At the end of the day, for Aquatics, you're actually doing a great job. Because many of your cost recoveries are at or above where we're classifying your programs at. The reason that I highlighted the swim team is that is not something that you're going to charge the school district for. But what it does is it gives you an understanding of the value of services that you're providing to them for them to use your pool. So when you, in turn, are looking to, as part of your joint use agreement, utilize gymnasium space, you should understand this is the value that we're providing, this is the value that we want in return. So it's really helpful tool, not just in terms of pure cost recovery, but this specifically about making sure that you're in a win-win partnership, at least financially. Does that make sense? Okay. So when we look at Aquatics, if you took the $8,800 out of the swim team, you really have an opportunity to maybe make an additional $3,000 just by applying the classification of services methodology and the cost recovery. So we'll go through the same exercise for three others. Art and culture. So art and culture is really a mix of what we'll call those individual skill-oriented programs, such as ballet or drawing or knitting or painting or piano lessons and so on and so forth, and then special events offered to the community. The big takeaway here is that for the most part, the programs that, with the exception of maybe those first two, but have really small participation, most of those kind of individual driven piano lessons, ballet lessons, you're doing pretty well with. The other thing, the big takeaway from this is all of those special events. Most of the revenue generated for things like the Family Arts Festival, Gold Fever Day, the Summer Concert Series, public art exhibits are all sponsorship driven. So what this kind of gives you an understanding now is how much does it cost you in taxpayer dollars to run those programs? And then what is the potential additional sponsorship dollars that you can seek to offset those costs? The nice part about this is even if you just added up Family Arts Festival, Gold Fever Day, Movies Under the Stars, you're at almost over 6,000 people participating in that. If you had an opportunity to reach out to the community for an additional $10,000 to offset the cost of those programs, in essence, what you're doing is you're putting yourself in a position of saying, we have over 6,000 people minimum. We're asking for $10,000. The investment per person that you're making in sponsorship is $1.50 per person. So it gives you some really good information and some justification for why you're asking for a specific sponsorship at a specific level, and also what is the benefit to the person or the entity or the business or the organization that is helping sponsor that. So it gives you some information related to that specifically. Athletics is probably the one where you have the most opportunity to generate additional revenue. Your current cost recovery for adult sports is 37% to 57%. That should be at least 75%. So using a 75% cost recovery benchmark, because this is really individual, the only person's benefiting is the individual from these programs. This is where you have an opportunity to increase revenue by slowly but surely using the market, looking at the market factors, but also slowly but surely increasing your cost to help offset the expenditures. The other flip side is always, can you manage your expenditures better? And that is the part of the equation that is always incumbent upon a government entity, is managing your expenditures to meet your cost recovery goals. Doesn't always have to be user fees or increases. So that is where you potentially have about 13,000. And then community outdoor. So this is community-based or outdoor programs doing a fantastic job. I mean, really, at the end of the day, there's very, very little wiggle room associated with this. So the big takeaway from this is really good information to utilize going forward. It also then can help you change your pricing policy based on this methodology, as opposed to just saying, you know what, for kids, we're going to do this, and adults, we're going to do this, and for other programs, we're going to do this. And that is what we typically see, is people stratify pricing policies just purely based on age, as opposed to how those taxpayer dollars are being used and who is actually benefiting from you running those programs. So we will make a recommendation that really says, look to revamp your pricing policy using this methodology. We have some data to help back that up. And then as you go forward, it gives you an understanding of how do you track your costs. Brian actually has a great tool already in place within the department to do that. But it gives you an understanding of how are we doing in terms of matching up with offering programs based on community benefit, and it's tied to cost recovery. Okay? And then we have an entire kind of program recommendations, and this is somewhat high level, but it kind of gives you an understanding based on the prioritization of the community as to whether or not you should, things that are high priority, whether you need to expand upon them or implement them, whether you need to continue to do them, or potentially whether or not at some point you should even slightly consider it. There's a number of things under the low priority that you can consider doing that you're currently not doing, but you need a much stronger market in order to start offering those things. The things at the top, you simply see expand, or start to do those kind of programs. And again, it's all about making sure we have the right places to do it, the right partners in place to do this, but it kind of gives you an understanding of where do you put your eggs? Where do you put your resources kind of going forward? One thing that we talked about from a recreation division standpoint is, let's say the YMCA does happen, and some of the higher priority needs of the community are met by the YMCA. You have a bunch of medium priority programs and services that actually lend themselves to the type of spaces that you have in your park system to run these kind of programs. Many of them are enrichment programs, but you also have environmental education programs. You have outdoor programs, folks or programs for people with disabilities. It really gives you an opportunity to complement what the YMCA is doing by rounding out the programs and services using the dollars that you have now to do a good job of having a program and service delivery system as a town that meets not just the highest priorities, but also the medium priorities as well. And there's not a lot of communities that you can say do that, because they typically only have enough resources or only have enough partnerships where you can just meet the highest priorities, and everything else, which is a much longer list between medium and low, never gets touched. So you really have an opportunity here to have a robust parks and recreations or a recreation service program system that does a great job of meeting many, many needs in your community for the taxpayer dollars that are spent. Next steps, finalize the funding strategies. We are going to present the back end of this, so all of the CIP, program and service and maintenance assessment, to the Art and Culture Commission and Town Council in March. And then we will be to you with a master plan, hopefully a recommendation for master plan, final in May, and to council either at the end of May or beginning of June. So that's where we're at. You all have seen a lot of information along the way, and I appreciate your time and due diligence and energy behind it. Questions?
Well, I'll just start out and say that's exactly, I think, what I was looking for. I mean, that is just a fantastic information that gives us the ability to form our fee structure, develop programs. The look at the parks and the costs is just, sometimes we look at these in big chunks and it's not broken down quite as much as you have. So this is just, I think you've done an amazing job. I think this will be very valuable.
I believe it's going to help the future of this commission looking forward now with all this information, what we're going to look at in the future, and decisions we're going to have to try and make, and things that we're going to have to start doing to thrive.
Especially fees, and
there's things that we've always done that we've always wanted to say, let's not do a charge, but I think the times are coming where we just might have to start looking at some fees and some changes. And this is great information, Mike. It was just unbelievable. A lot of information, but I mean, it's eye-opening. It's just, we sit here on this commission and think, we kind of know what's going on. And then we get a report like this, we have no idea what's going on. And it is just wonderful information. Any other questions, comments? Not. Thank you so much again, Mike, for coming up.
Welcome.
Really good.
You guys get a break for a few months from me, so you're good. Thanks, folks. I appreciate your time. I know that was long, but I wanted to make sure we spent enough time to get through it. Thank you.
Very well. Very good. Drive safe home, Mike. Next, we'll go to programs, classes, and special events with Brian.
Yes. More of the good stuff that we just got done talking about. So I, much like you, am very excited about this analysis that's been going on. We've definitely showing successes. We're also recognizing some areas that we need to make improvements on. The big thing is about balance in regards to our service and our portfolios, and it's how it's going to develop and looking at all those things. But these are some of the things that we've got going on currently right now. We have our adult dance exercise classes. This is Vitality Ballet for seniors and Latin Ballroom Fusion for our adults. $5 classes, drop-in experiences available. We also are encouraging your inner artist to come out. Our department has plenty of art classes. We have acrylic painting workshops, drawing and sketching, and private art lessons. Basic dog obedience classes are available. Our next session starts in March, 6 weeks in total. Class meets once a week. Fight for Fitness, these are on Thursdays at the Civic Center on the third floor activity room. Again, $5 per class opportunities. I'll be focusing in Taibo, kickboxing styled classes designed for all fitness levels and abilities. And all of those programs and classes and services can be found directly online. We have a whole variety of listings for all of our age groups. This is found on the town website at pvaz.net. So the comfort of your home, you can review those and also sign up and register for those classes if they are of interest. We're beginning to look. I know it's chilly outside. We just had snow come through last night, but we're looking at getting our Mountain Valley Splash Aquatics Center up and operating. So we are looking for lifeguards, swim lesson instructors, the aquatic supervisors, office staff, and cashiers and concessions folks. We have an open hiring on Friday, March 20th from 3 to 5, and then Saturday, March 21st from 10 to 2 at Mountain Valley Splash. But it does require you to go online and complete your application with us so that we can get you scheduled and going through those processes. Another one of our opportunities is a seated volleyball class. These are on Tuesdays over at the Prescott Valley Civic Center in the activity room. Come learn how to play. It's perfect for those with limited mobility and a great way to be physically and socially active. We also have coming up soon a walking club. Join and meet with fellow walkers, have fun, and improve your health. This has a $10 annual membership fee attached to it. All ages, strollers, and leash dogs are welcome. These will be held on Friday mornings at 9 a.m. We're going to kickstart this in May on the 22nd at Mountain Valley Park. So with that, that concludes some of our up-and-coming fun and wonderful programs and services headed your way.
Good. Any questions, comments? I know that we always offer things. There's plenty to do in time. If you're not doing anything, it's your own fault, because there's always something to do in Prescott Valley. Okay, moving on, we'll go to the director's report with the department updates.
Yes, just kind of a little review and reflection over the last previous 30 days, pretty much the month of January. Hope everyone enjoyed all the fun and efforts and partnerships going on for our New Year's Eve celebration. I was out there with Prescott Valley PD, Central Arizona Fire and Medical Authority. Our pyrotechnics team did a fantastic job out there. All kinds of fun and craziness going on. Also, Polar Bear Splash. Hopefully some of you chose to jump in, or at least jump into the action of going on out there for Polar Bear. Had a good crowd. Wasn't quite as cool as today in doing that, but fantastic pancake breakfast donated to us all out there from IHOP and that team. So fantastic. Really enjoyed the activities going out there. As you gathered this evening with all the reporting going on from Mr. Svets from Pros Consulting, quite a bit of data analysis and crunching and reporting throughout the month, getting to this point in time for this evening. Also working on some new activities coming forward. You'll hear a little bit more about this in the upcoming months. Looking at a new community event, Rhythm and Brews, coming in May. And very excited to announce tonight publicly that Finlay Automotive Group is on board as the title sponsor for that event. So shout out to them. Thank them much for their support. But a fantastic event coming to you, and we'll have some members of our team coming to lay that out and announce it in the upcoming months here. Month of February coming up, a lot of planning in regards to daddy-daughter date night, activity that has been growing by leaps and bounds over the course of several years. Very excited about that. A Northern Arizona Coffee Festival is brewing. Again, another one of those good things coming forward in our near future is another event into town. So if you're into specialized coffees and brew houses and things of that nature, a very fun and festive environment out there, great entertainment. In our athletics divisions, our winter volleyball leagues are up with 4 out of the 5 leagues at its max capacity with waiting lists. We're beginning registration for spring softball leagues, also spring volleyball and basketball. Always looking for umpires and officials to help us assist in the operations of those programs. I hate to announce this, but I'm excited and fired up for it. We're losing our athletics coordinator. She's leaving us.
Whoa.
But she's going to our aquatics division. So I'm excited about that. Yes, she has chosen to take a passion of hers that she actually came to us with. Her previous background was largely in aquatics and joined our athletic program, but she found that we had this opportunity and we said, oh, heck yes, jump on board with us. So she's in the process of transitioning and getting things wrapped up in our athletics program, grabbing a hold of the aquatics and all of its startup. Being supported by other coordinators and our supervisors and managers, but we're also actively advertising for a athletics coordinator. So that's going to be going on for the next couple of weeks. So when you hear the name Marissa, think formerly of athletics, now aquatics. She's going to be joining us over there, doing those fun things. Also, again, continue fostering relationships over at the Boys and Girls Club and the facility over there as they've had a new site director come on board, so growing those types of things. We do a joint partnership program with them through Major League Baseball with Pitch Hit and Run, so cooperatively beginning that, introducing that to their program and their staff through their developments. And then out in our Parks Division, again, very, very active, doing a lot of concrete repairs. Unfortunately, some negative interactions with tree roots and those types of things, but also some failures in those systems, so some of our walking areas, so we're making those repairs. Quite a bit of effort in regards to preparation elements over at Santa Fe Station Park for some of those new amenities that are coming on board, and we'll talk a little bit about those more specifically later on tonight. So those are some of the updates about the craziness and fun and excitement that we have going on in our Parks and Recreation Department for the month of January. So I'm happy to answer any questions on any of the specifics within the department's report as a whole.
I noticed you had discussions on a cell tower for Civic Center.
Actually at Casa Park, I believe.
Was it Casa?
I think so, and if not, typo on my part, so I apologize for that. Over at Community Center Park, possible cell tower. Boy.
Is that the same that we were looking at,
5 or 6 years ago when there was interest from a telecom company for George Anderson Park as well as Casa. Their location at Casa was conflicting with utilities.
Right.
They've relooked at that. Technology, of course, has just been rapidly changing. It was a discussionary, more or less a site review inquiry in regards to that possibility of coming in there. I think we have found what could be a very reasonable, much more utility infrastructure friendly application out there. So we'll see how they want to progress in looking at that. Again, just a site discovery, no formal applications or anything like that at this point in time.
Well, we hope it goes in, really. I mean, I think it would have been a good idea a few years ago, and I remember the problems that we looked at. So.
Correct. And I think at that point in time, viewpoint was a higher priority, and so now they're going through this process, and a lot of this is results of 3G is pretty much non-existent. 4G is kind of the current level of standard, and everything is transitioning into the 5. So that's part of this transference that they're looking at and adding to that infrastructure.
Very good. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the chairperson's report. So we're already into the second month of 2020, and I thought, you know what, what's going to happen in our future with parks? So I looked up a few interesting articles in magazines we get, and it says that technology will start to play a huge role with video camera surveillance exploding in parks and facilities. Rapidly improving technology, mass production, and drones are making surveillance affordable. A power source is no longer needed due to solar-powered cameras, which can be placed in parks, community centers, and along the trails. Drones can be used for natural resource inventory, inspection of remote parks and areas, and trails, and search and rescue operations. People questioned about the cameras, had no complaints, and had many requests for more cameras in their communities. Killing weeds without glyphosate, commonly known maybe as Roundup. The most commonly used weed killer in the world will likely be soon banned in parks and communities. As controversy grows over the safety of glyphosate or Roundup, evidence shows negative effects on human health as well as wildlife. Few predictions are agencies will soon ban glyphosate in 2020, causing a wholesale change in landscape management practices to control invasive species and weeds in park landscapes. Some communities, such as Phoenix, have more than 100 days a year when the temperatures exceed 100 degrees. What can parks do to help with extreme heat? Glad you asked, Elaine. The preserve of trees and green infrastructure is not only as an amenity for recreation, but it can also be a vital component to help reduce impacts of extreme heat. Future parks, linear green spaces, and trail corridors will be designed to cool communities as well as to provide recreational benefits. And last but not least, cause-related programs are becoming insanely popular. An example of this is a local animal shelter sponsors a 5K run that pairs a shelter dog and a runner. Bringing the awareness and money-making, people feel like they have made a difference. Insta-worthy is when people take a cool photo and show cool things they are doing and share it on social media. Is becoming another huge fad in parks where they're climbing a rock and taking their picture and say, hey, look, And so when we look to the future of our parks, we need to think about reducing weeds some other way, maybe doing some kind of fun surveillance things, and of course, always offer people more of what they want and being cool. Any questions, comments?
Thank you.
Well, I think we are seeing some additional surveillance, the new systems for the Civic Center and the police. I don't know, they were talking about
No, and
Park.
That's a large, no, you're correct in regards to that, and there are things that we've been looking at over the course of the years. For me, I don't like the language, surveillance. We don't watch. It's reactionary. It's you're going to be found and held accountable for, as opposed to I don't have time, energy, desire to want to sit at a desk and look at multiple camera things. I value people, but at the same time, when something happens, I want whoever's doing whatever that they shouldn't be doing held accountable for those processes. So it will be technology that we'll be looking at. And it's a matter of community policing as well. We talked about a little bit earlier in regards to park utilization. Let's use them for the right reasons, for the right purposes. If they're being used in the wrong ways, we have to do something different in regards to either discourage the negative use or encourage the positive use. And so if this helps encourage the positive use through cameras, hence holding accountability in the right way, then why would we not try to help foster that type of environment? So, supporting the positives, being this glass is more than just half full type of a vantage point. So those would be the types of things we're looking at. Trees, as we know, one of our passions that we have out there. So if that can help providing more shade, it's going to help people. It's going to keep things cooler. It's going to go in the right direction. It's natural, longevity to it, managed properly. It will always be there for us. We're in a great climate region where we can support those types of things. I feel sorry for Phoenix in regards to some of the trees. There's limited shade opportunities, but I think that's one of the benefits that we have to be able to do those types of things. So yeah, we're always looking, forecasting, trying to manage, trying to do, and it's always going to be one of our challenges, and that's the beauty of our master plan that we've got going on for us too. So.
What about the weeds? Do we have an alternative weed killer?
That's part of pretty much what our whole industry's looking at transitioning. We do use a variety of different methodologies to do that. We burn off weeds. There is actually hot foam treatments that are out there doing those types of things. We try to increase the density of our vegetation so that it chokes out weeds, but we battle it in our own yards, just growing in our rock or decomposed granite, those types of things. Hula hoos, we use court-appointed work crews to help us manage those types of things, but we also herbicide, pesticide, treat.
Do we use?
Yes, it's a very typical standard.
And we're going to have to stop using it.
What's ironic is for the common name of Roundup has all of this context of discussion around it. There's a even more toxic, more harmful product that can be used that's not regulated. We don't use that type of thing that's out there. So it's a matter of what we're working in, and we're working to stay within those proper regulations. All of our applicators, including our third-party contractors, are licensed in regards to the proper application and management and regulation of those products and services. But yes, we do utilize it.
And I utilize it in my house just as much. I mean, when those weeds do come up, what do? You squirt Roundup on them, it kills them.
Right.
Well, I have a dog. He takes care of the weeds.
There you go. So,
walk them in our park a little more often. Okay, any more questions, comments?
About goats.
Goats again, appropriate applications. Goats, alpacas are utilized in the region, out on ranch areas and those things. So there's a whole host of different.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to tree advisory business. We invited a guest to come this evening. That's part of our board, and he couldn't make it this evening, so we're just going to mention his name, Dana Diller. He's our volunteer arborist. We're hoping that he can maybe make next month, and we will introduce all of you to him and have a little more of a tree advisory report. So moving on, we'll go to old business with the Santa Fe Station Park construction updates.
Yes. Give folks a little update and information here. I know that I mentioned by the end of January we were fully expecting a restroom to be here. I do not have an expected date as of yet. What I do know is that all of the underground infrastructure is located, put into place as far as the sewer, the water systems there. We do have our Subcontractor coming back in for establishing all of the pedestal for the energy coming to the site. APS is already bored underneath Glyphosate Hill for running that conduit, so all of that electrical needs to be pulled into the park and will happen once that pedestal is put into place, because that's its connectivity. From that pedestal, we'll then be able to connect restroom, pickleball courts, irrigation system, parking lot lights, yada yada, everything that needs to be energized within that location. So those things are just right around the corner. I'm hoping that before the end of February, restroom is in place, but we're really within just a couple of days of being prepared for accepting that. We're going to look at tweaking our schedule because of these delays that we have, seeing if we can't get the Ramada on the front side now of the restroom project. So as soon as we're wrapping up all of the underground utilities there for the restroom, we're going to be approaching then all of the preparations that need to come for the Ramada that's going to be located there. Currently, beyond that, playgrounds and high utilization. If you've been driving by and seeing the pickleball courts, that is just blowing our socks off, so that's pretty cool going on out there. You're going to see all of our park locations starting to go through that transformation of greening up. Our temperatures are going to pick up. We're going to be aerating, fertilizing, overseeding, and especially Santa Fe Park, just because that is part 2, I believe, of our seeding process that we'll have for that location. So it'll have a quick greening coming on as well too. So those are a few of those components that are still in play for us there at Santa Fe Station. So bear with us just a little bit, but we'll have that. I do know all of the plan submittals and everything else are in with the state of Arizona for their approvals. Once those approvals are received, it's literally a 10-day facilitation period for construction, and then whatever that delivery and install schedule then produces thereafter. I'm hoping to have by mid to late March the ribbon cutting with all amenities and everything wrapped up and ready to rock and roll. So the park in totality is good. The only thing I don't have a timeline on is that connecting entrance there at Glyphosate Hill and Spouse, because that is tethered to Glyphosate Hill expansion, lighting of that intersection, all of those things, and that will all trigger at that point in time. But I don't have a specific window on those things. Okay?
Brian, would you say that those pickleball courts are the best courts that we have to offer?
Those are our only courts that we have to offer, and yes, they are our best simply because they are new, by standard, all that good stuff.
I haven't seen many others. I'm trying to just figure out a way to have something positive come from such a big surge in this pickleball sport. I've never played it. I need to play it. It's really taking over. I think a good way to get camaraderie within the town is if people could represent the town in pickleball tournaments. Does anyone know if they have?
They already are,
okay.
And that's the cool thing about what's happening. We're a little bit, as far as a inventory of facilities of this, we are behind, but that's where our HOAs, our master plan communities, have already gap filled that. But it's our core folks that have not had access to that. So we're growing that inventory, and it will be a component. It's a matter of trend, and yeah, it's been trending, but it hasn't been a fireball of a trend like it has in, let's say, the last 3 to 5 years, where it's just ramping. And to put it bluntly, it's more of us that are old tennis players that are playing it. That's not the vibe anymore. It's everybody's playing it. Genders, age generations, it's multifaceted. So that's why I'm saying it's a real big fireball that's going on right now. So as new parks are coming into play, even the master plan communities themselves are looking at how they're expanding those types of services and amenities. So if you may not recall, my apologies, but several of our other members, the Prescott Valley Pickleball Association came to the town with a plan that said, hey, if we can find the monies, can you find us the place? And that agreement's already on the table. Council's approved it. It's sitting there. So now we just need to, we're doing what we can to help foster that group in regards to them developing the fundraising that they need. The space is already allocated. Antelope Park is its destination, and it's a 6-court layout that they desire. So they're underway with that, and I think it's going to be a fabulous amenity within a current existing park, doing those fun things. And yes, it's definitely has to grow.
I think it's great, just keep. You said ex-tennis players.
Yeah, that's kind of
moving, because I know I've seen softball, on a busy night, and it's astounding how many 18 to 34 demographic are out there with their families.
Correct.
And it's good to see something to get to the older crowd to draw to and be social and active.
Definitely.
Right.
And with sports, peaks and valleys. Golf was riding along real nice, and all of a sudden we had this Tiger craze, and everybody needed to build a golf course. Master plan communities, if you were considering a master plan community, you had to build a golf course,
right?
And so on and so forth. So we have those little things. We're on that rise right now. I think it'll probably be a continuing trend, just because it allows for, and it's built and predicated upon the fact of levels of play. So everyone's playing evenly in regards to their skill sets and those types of things. So I'm very excited for it. Softball's kind of going through this, it actually is trending down, but it's starting to plateau in its downward trend, and I think it'll flatten, and I think it'll start to grow a little bit just because of where youth sports are going right now. But it's one of those things that, just like we heard Mike addressing to us earlier, we've got programs and services. Some things have to go away at a certain point in time, and take those and reinvest and do this. And that's kind of what's happening. I would say golf's going away, pickleball's coming in,
right?
Doing that. So for Santa Fe, that's pretty much where we're at right now.
Any other questions, comments for Santa Fe? It's a busy park, and it's going to be bigger and better once everything's in there and done. Okay, moving on. We'll go to the Azgfd Heritage Grant update.
Yes, this is our Arizona Game and Fish Department Heritage Fund grant. This is funded through the Heritage Funds, which was a program designated by Arizona citizens, voted upon in regards to getting back into our outdoor programs, parks, recreations, and those investments. Our application that we have in right now is related to reinvesting in our fisheries programs and services. I know we talked about this program several months ago. It has been accepted into the program. It's going through its reviews. We're anticipating probably more than likely April, hearing back from board review and then commissioners' recommendations and acceptance of those grants in order to be moving them forward. So that's where it sits right now. This one goes back like into November when we were going through this review and its application process. It does take them a little bit of time, but the good word is that we're on the right track and going with this. We're also part of that community fishing program, so we have skin in the game directly with them. So we're feeling positive, but we'll have a full understanding of acceptance and commissioner approvals hopefully in April during their meeting.
Very good. Any questions, comments? Fishing still, it's getting bigger and better.
It's wonderful.
Every time you go by, they're out there.
Yes. It
Coming
is
along
wonderful.
swimmingly.
A fish in the hand.
Yeah. It's on the right line.
Moving along.
As long as we get everybody hooked. Aye.
Don't start.
Moving on. We'll go to new
Line and
business.
sinker? I don't know.
We'll go to new business. Friends of the Parks and Recreation ribbon cutting at American Legion Park, March 20th.
Yes, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. This commission is very well informed in regards to all of the transformation that has occurred over several years that has come, compliments of all the hard work, due diligence, fundraising, partnerships, grant applications, you name it. But I would say easily close to $50,000 have been raised that has gone in a total renovation of American Legion Park. When I walked in on the job, this was a park that had a parking lot, a restroom, a makeshift ramada that still exists. We're working on that. And some fabulous horseshoe pits that were constructed by the Horseshoe Throwers Association here in Prescott Valley. They host tournaments that folks from all throughout the state come and participate in that, and we've got folks that go from that on to nationals. And so the Friends, number one, because they value and honor our veterans, i.e. American Legion Park, that they did not want what I will throw out there as a blighted environment, because there was not a stitch of grass. It was full of weeds. That was basically what was being grown. It was not being sprayed. It was being mowed in doing those types of things. And that level of interaction and use by the community was minuscule. Today, through their efforts, through the contributions of staff time and expertise and knowledge, volunteers that have come to the table, donations, grants that have been applied, that $50,000 has transformed this park. We have trees growing in it, grass from corner to corner. We've got parking lot improvements. Volunteers have come in and painted facilities. The town has gotten skin in the game. We have a brand new ramada over there. We're going to be looking at reinvesting in the playground. That's one of those elements that's in our master plan as it's being created right now. So that is brought to the standard that this community expects. The Friends just basically want to say, it's open, it's yours, and thank you to everyone through an entire communal experience. So this is going to be held on March 20th, 4:30 p.m. It's a real quick, short little ceremony, 4:30 to 5. It's an unveiling, but it's a thank you ceremony coming from them to the community and to the town. So I invite you all, if you can join with us, that would be fantastic. Would love it to death. Get to meet some of these fantastic folks, not only who are the Friends, and it's a very small group. They're always looking for more friends, okay? But also, hopefully, some of those helpers that have helped us over this course of time as well, too. So that's what this event is. We'd love to have you.
Very good. Questions, comments? Hope we can all make it, and it'll be a lot of fun. Okay, moving on. Any other? I have just a reminder that Valentine's Day is Friday. Elaine, are you still doing singing telegrams?
Oh, dancing.
Dancing telegram. Okay, very good. For a couple bucks, Elaine will show up at your door.
More than a couple of bucks.
Oh. The price has gone up, have they?
Yes.
All right.
5% every year.
She's reviewed our parks plan. Other than that, anybody else have anything else? Hearing none, we'll go to unscheduled public appearances. Yes, come right on up. You will get 5 minutes. You can address the commission as a whole, and if you have any questions at the end, and we can.
Good evening. I think we've seen each other before, but I'm a resident of Granville. My name is Lori Sebring, and presently Aquafria Park is my backyard. So we are a little concerned. As a gullible home buyer, I was told it was state land, that it was also a floodplain, so that nothing could be built behind me. I am a gullible landowner. So when they told me park was coming in, I was concerned. And then when they told me that they were putting out a survey to survey the community, I was a little more hopeful. So when the survey results came back, I was very hopeful, because if you remember that survey, the top of those lists were walking and hiking trails, biking trails, target areas, open space. That's what I have behind me right now, is open space. And I'm not against a park. I thought, yay, the rest of Prescott Valley wants what I want. They want some open space. They want walking trails. They want some ramadas to have picnic areas. I was thrilled. I thought, okay, this isn't going to be as bad as I thought. Tonight when I got here and I see 5 baseball fields and 3 rectangular lit fields and those things, and I was a little more concerned. And so because I know all that takes parking and lighting and those things. And presently, it's, even in our community was stressed that night sky. So we do have street lights, but we have street lights very seldom. If you're out on my street, you can't see the street at night. It's very, very dark. And so in your future considerations, I want you to go back to the survey and consider really what the town wants. Because he said what our demographics were, and that they weren't going to change that dramatically from where they are to where they're going. So I'm looking forward saying that what Prescott Valley wants now is what they are going to want 15 years from now if our demographics are not going to change that much. So all I'm asking is, when you're looking at this master plan and everything, that you consider the survey and why did we do it. And secondly, just possibly consider night sky, open space, walking trails, because that was kind of what was represented in the survey. So that's all I'm asking. I'm not against having a park back there. I don't want baseball lights right in my backyard. And I'm sure you wouldn't want that in yours either. So just some consideration to what the residents did say they wanted, and going forward, making sure that you take a look at that, you kind of take those into consideration. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Ron?
I'd just add, thank you for your comments. And the Aquafria Park the concept of it, I don't know, it was before my time, and I've been on the commission over 10 years.
It was
34 years.
Yeah, it's a long term.
It was 23 years ago we talked about this.
It's a potential down the road. It is state land now, so the town doesn't even have it. The initial phases, and Brian, you can correct me here, is in some future years the town will probably allot some money and maybe do some planning for the park. The public will be involved in all that. You will be involved in all of that. Yeah. So, and we're talking years down the road. When you saw that list of fields.
I've been here 34 years and I didn't plan on going anywhere. So.
Okay. When you saw that list of playing fields and needs, that's for that future growth. So where those will be, I don't know. Aquafria is a possibility.
And that's just what I want. And you guys might not even be on this board when those things happen.
You might be.
I might be. You're right. I might be. Very well, I might be. And the other thing that I know they will consider it is that we've seen more and more water come through that area in the last couple of years. And a year and a half ago in the summer, I had a lake behind my house and a raging river going I'm at the top of the hill, so it wasn't behind my house, but my neighbors down the street it was amazing the amount of water that was running behind their house. And I know that will all be considered for that too, but we seem to have more water running in that space, and so I'm kind of concerned. If I had small children out there when it rained, I wouldn't want to have small children out there in the lower lying areas when it rains. That water comes pretty raging down the north side of that
And if you've had a chance to be over, say, at Bob Edwards Park and see the lighting over there, you see it doesn't really intrude out beyond the field.
It's pretty much,
so
it goes
all of our,
so that would be all be in consideration.
Yeah, everything would, but please come and talk to us in the future years. I don't have any idea when that'll be, and give us your input.
Yep, I plan on it.
Thank you very much.
It won't only be you at that meeting. It's going to be softball, football, tennis, pickleball. I mean, and we do consider the whole community. I know that a lot of people just want this, but we have to look. But of course, it's a 320-acre park, so behind your house could be the green space, and here it could be.
My consideration was put the lighting fields and the parking closer to the road, because
exactly.
People have to get to that lighting port and parking.
Sure. You bet. All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? You could state your name and address for us, please.
My name is Robert Sebring. I also live in Granville. She's my other half. And that's one of my biggest concerns about the park back there. We've lived there. We were the fifth house built in Granville. And with the development of the community development associations like Jasper, they're building 4,000 homes. Granville has redistributed all that water, since there's no ground to soak it up, is going to come down through that park. I mean, I've seen a raging river out there just like my wife, and a whole lake out there. So that's one of my biggest concerns. The other comment that I have is, I don't think Mike touched on it, but it's the population growth and the current population of Prescott Valley and the age group. Honestly, I feel like Jasper Construction, Granville, most of the population growth is in the 50s and 60 years old. Okay? We're not using those amenities. Okay? So I think he needs to factor in what percent of the population is really the growth, okay? Because most of the people that I know and I've talked to, younger people are not able to afford these $300,000, $400,000 homes here. It's mostly an older population, retired population that is coming to Prescott Valley. That I feel most of the population, some of yourselves, are not using these baseball fields, all these amenities. We're using the pickleball courts. We're using the walking trails and things like that. But that's one factor I don't think he factored in up here, is how much of our population is older and how much of that growth, how much of that population is not going to be used these amenities.
Sure.
That's my own comment.
And I understand, but also you have to understand, in 15 years, there could be businesses here and there could be factories, and we could have young families moving here with children and need these amenities. We don't know what the future is going to bring 15 years from now. So I understand your point of, we are kind of more retired area than we are.
We're advertising that. We're advertising this is a retirement community here.
Well, I've heard Sun City North.
So one of the factors to figure that out would be to factor in the families that are moving here is how much growth there is in the current school systems. If the school system and the students are declining, then most of the people are going to be moving here that are retired. So.
Sure.
Thank you.
And it is. It's just a crystal ball.
And some of the tools that Mike laid out will really help us in seeing those demographics and those changes. As we see the programs change and maybe decline, it's just like the chart that he showed where you have to move the programs out and initiate new things. Now we're going to have all these tools to use to do that type of work.
Very good. Next, sure.
Hello, my name is Billy Marie S. Douglas, and I live on Bronco Lane. And thank you for your service and what you guys do, and also you ask incredible good questions. Woo! I am also concerned that this survey is not being taken. From what I heard tonight, I was a little concerned about the top priorities were hiking, biking, and talking about what the people want in the community. And I know there's concern about where the money is going to come from. I think that's I understand that. Right back there on that property, there's the Iron King Trail, which was a railroad. That's a perfect place for a bike. It's all set up. A bike trail could go through, and hiking can go straight from one side of the area, of the 1 square mile, to the other side. And it would take care of having people so they could bike, and that was part of the survey. Also, I know that it seems like with the water situation, sorry about my throat, that Army Corps of Engineers are going to have to be checked out on that, because they are a part in the area down there, and then FEMA, it seems like it would have to be addressed too. So those are some of my concerns. I think the parking, I think the hiking, the biking, the night skies, I think what it would help is that it helps the community, plus it also helps people wanting to come here to visit. It helps them that want to come and stay at our hotels and stuff. Rather than people just also living here, we want people to come and visit and say, we have something besides houses. And I think we have to be careful in here, because when sometimes I look at a website, I see Prescott Valley, they say about houses. I like to see more to say, I'm coming here because I want to hike, I want to bike, I want to be what's available here, and make it a destination for people to come and visit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I think, Brian, hiking and biking is really kind of one of our priorities. We're not sure exactly how that unfolds, but I see we have a new hiking club coming out. And will that be just urban hiking, or will we be actually...
It'll morph in a variety of different directions, and a lot of that is how to engage our resources. So we'll be playing with all of those good things, and that's why we have the run for the hill of it. Yeah, it says run, but we hike it, we walk it, those types of things. Matter of semantics there, but as was eloquently put out there, we're looking for all variety of opportunities. So that hiking, the biking, the Iron King's already existing. Yes, it would be a matter of also the expanded infrastructure that's going to have to go through is that particular site. If the focus is on Aquafria, it's going to have to go through a variety of different analysis and review in regards to floodwater management, all of that different developed infrastructure that could be there, expansion of those hiking, walking, biking trails that would be part of that connectivity through the entirety of that system. Because I could see easily Iron King connecting now to, son of a gun, pipeline trail that takes us all the way out into Pronghorn and beyond. So all of those different types of things. So that's part of the overall master planning. We're one particular component of that from a parks and recreational element of this. And yes, we desire some of those same designs that helps facilitate visitors to our area. Why is that important? It helps offset those expenses and operations, because all of Prescott Valley's general fund is largely based upon sales tax. Not property taxes, but sales taxes. So if we have guests that are visiting with us, staying in the hotels, doing those types of things, and we have the amenities attracting them, they need to be diversified just as much as what our population is as well too, doing those types of things. And we're trying very much to lay out our program based upon how those demographics have changed and evolved over time, because it was much older. Now we keep getting younger, but then also it's ebbing and flowing. And yes, some of that trend analysis is affordability. And we've heard those public discussions in regards to available, affordable housing for young folks that are that grew up in our community, wanting to come back and reinvest in our community. So it's a multifaceted rascal to try to wrangle a little bit here. So.
And some of our proposed trails, such as the one connecting Summit and the Iron King, are on state land, and we have had in an application to lease
several years
and until
several more.
Yeah, it's a little,
but it's a matter of expanding and connectabilities and all of those things, again enriching in that infrastructure. So
yep,
cool.
Yeah, very good. All right, so we'll go on to our next meeting. Will be held on March 10th, right here, 6:30 at this auditorium. And if there's no more questions or comments, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, wait, do I have a second?
Second.
There you go. I got a couple seconds.
Said second.
And then all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Good night, Prescott Valley. See you next month.